This headline has been in the 5 headlines seemingly every week, and it's the lightweight pitcher. What is happening at 155 pounds? We talk about it all the time. The latest here is that we still don't know exactly what's happening with Khabib Nurmagomedov. I've spoken to his manager. There's been some reports out of Russia. According to his manager, he has not yet seen a specialist. He intends to travel to Germany and get this thing checked out. You know, the liver issue, the bad weight cut that prevented him from fighting at UFC 209. Meanwhile, Tony Ferguson went on the MMA Hour this week on MMA fighting. Kind of called out Nate Diaz, kind of said he's still interested in Khabib. Michael Chiesa is out there asking for that fight. Tony Ferguson only wants an interim title fight or a real title fight. I mean, I think what he would really want is a fight against Conor McGregor for the real lightweight championship, but that's not happening. So he's looking around trying to figure out what his best option is. Nate Diaz is still turning down fights. I think if Ferguson is going to talk Diaz into fighting him, he's got to be real loud, and he's got to start promoting this thing in a big, big way, because that's how Nate Diaz is at this point in his career. You got to get his interest. You've got to promote the fight yourself, and then you can get his name attached to it. I don't know. I wrote a column last week saying that I still thought at the end of the day Khabib fighting Ferguson would happen, but it's just so hard to predict because we don't know what's going on with Nurmagomedov's health. Phil, I guess, your general thoughts. What do you think's happening here at the lightweight division?
It's 4 cars trying to get in one spot. Everyone wants Conor McGregor, and like we said off the top of the show, we don't know what's next for Conor. So that leaves, okay, let's just keep going down the rankings. I don't have them in front of me, but up towards the top, it's Tony Ferguson, it's Khabib Nurmagomedov, it's Edson Barbosa. RDA is on his way to welterweight. Take him out. Michael Chiesa was scheduled to fight Tony Ferguson, I think on that South Dakota card before he pulled out with that back injury. He wants the Ferguson fight again. I mean, Brett, my opinion is the same as yours on this. I know it's dissent makes good radio, but it seems like the most obvious choice is, okay, let's just try it for the 4th time now. Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Give the fans what they want. That will be a compelling fight between 2 guys with a lot of personality, a lot of guys who are more than comfortable on the mic, more than comfortable promoting fights. But then you look at a guy like Edson Barbosa on his way up. It's a nice problem to have. And the UFC, the lightweight division, has always been one of its deeper classes. Reed Kuhn talks about in his book, Fightnomics, that just, the size of the average human, you're going to have the biggest pool of people in the lightweight division. Guys who naturally are 5'8 to 5'11, walk around about 170 to 175 pounds and would cut to 155. That's in the bell curve of human physique. That's where you're going to get the most people. So it's no surprise you have the deepest class there. It is a good problem for the UFC to have, though, to have multiple guys at the top who can promote fights, draw eyes, who can either add depth to a good pay-per-view card right behind a title fight, or headline a fight on one of these Fox cards or FS1 cards that seem to be, in the new era of WME, as they've taken over, have seemed to be a greater priority. You see some of the depth coming up, like on that Fox card in Kansas City. And they're not silly. They know that TV rights are coming up in the not-too-distant future, so it wouldn't hurt them to get some good ratings outside of pay-per-views. You have guys who can headline fights and different matchmaking there, but the problem is anytime you make one move, then the other dominoes have to fall a certain way. And as long as there's this big question mark over Conor McGregor's return, whether or not he will fight in the octagon in 2017 or in the ring, it's hard to have. He's the big. His domino is bigger than any of the other ones. So they're trying to almost figure out the ripple effect before they figure out the first big play. We're gonna know soon. Ferguson, he could announce a fight any day now, and not saying that he is going to, but he made weight and then, okay, well, I'm not fighting. So he can fight whenever. But the problem is, who do you put him against? And then how else does that affect the rest of the division? Ultimately, again, it's the consequence will be mitigated because you have enough options there and enough depth that invariably when these guys face each other, someone's going to lose. But then you have other pieces in play to fill in if the matchmaking is done properly. I think more in like the 5 to 10 area of the top 10.
Yeah, we need some dominoes to fall before we can find out exactly what's going to happen in this situation. I think the first one is Khabib's health. Is he able to go before he has to take that break for Ramadan? It's a Muslim observance period. It's a fasting period, which will essentially eliminate him from competition, I guess, from June and really July. I mean, he'd be looking at coming back potentially in August because of that. So can he fit in a fight with Tony Ferguson beforehand once we get a clear answer on that? No, it's not going to happen. Then I think you're going to see Tony Ferguson say, okay, well, who am I going to fight then? And it's going to become clear who his first pick is, I believe. I mean, Tony is a guy who's going to be hard to predict. He doesn't necessarily love to do media, so I'm not sure how he's going to get his message out there. But he's going to get his message clearly to the UFC that says, all right, look, give me a fight and give me an interim title fight. Here's probably my first choice, but really, as far as opponent goes, but really all I want is that fight soon, and I want it for an interim title or an official title. But that first domino of Khabib's health has to fall in place. So unfortunately, it would not surprise me if next week we're still looking back at this lightweight pitcher and not knowing what to make of it. Just announced, just coming through the Twitter wavelengths, that Scott Coker announcing that Lorenz Larkin, the former UFC welterweight, has now signed with Bellator MMA. And to parlay onto that, sources told me, as of this taping, Ryan Bader has not officially signed with Bellator, but yesterday sources told me that he received his clearance letter with UFC, meaning he is free and clear to sign with any promotion, and we're all assuming that it's going to be Bellator. We're all expecting it to be Bellator. So what is the big takeaway here, Phil? I mean, free agency is not something new. I would say that Ryan Bader and Lorenz Larkin, two very good fighters, two guys ranked in the top 10 at the time they left the UFC. Not the big splash signing that perhaps a Rory McDonald was, but what is the takeaway here? Is this a bigger movement that we're seeing, that we're constantly saying like, oh yeah, here comes free agency, or is this two guys that did well in the UFC, maybe didn't move the needle, quote unquote, as we like to say in this sport? How big of a deal is this that these two guys are going to Bellator?
Well, Brett, I think it's the second point you made. When WME put out that $4.2 billion with a B dollar figure for purchase of the UFC, it wasn't because of benevolence. They thought they had a product with which they could make money. And nerding out on you just a little bit here, when you look at things from an economic standpoint, I know if anyone has an economics degree, they could come and this is a broad brush statement, but there's something called Porter's generic strategies, and it's two ways to create a competitive advantage in any industry. That's either by product differentiation, creating a superior product, look at any like elite car brand, or cost minimalization. That's another way you can create a competitive advantage. It's not a binary thing. You can do a combination of the two. And what I think WME is doing here, I say all that for this statement, they're looking at the people who are the product differentiators. Your Conor McGregor, obviously, Ronda Rousey, John Jones, GSP, Brock Lesnar even, people who just have an it factor that can't be replicated. And to your point, you mentioned Ryan Bader, Lorenz Larkin. Those are guys who are top 10 in the weight class on the planet. And if the UFC is the premier mixed martial arts promotion, they should have the top 10 guys, right? Well, sure. But if you can find comparably skilled guys, other guys in the top 10 who maybe haven't been around as long, and you can get a comparable result, like when I see the list of a pay-per-view, we have UFC 211 coming up that's absolutely stacked. It would take someone who is a hardcore wrestling purist, and this is all due respect to Ryan Bader's abilities as a fighter, but someone would have to be a hardcore MMA purist to see Ryan Bader's on that card. I gotta tune in. If I see Ryan Bader on the card, I'm like, okay, well, there's an 80% chance he's going to beat whomever he's against. I mean, he's got a very, very strong wrestling resume, pedigree. He's had 20 UFC fights, won 15 of them. But he's a guy, I think, who falls into that cost minimalization category. You can get a comparable product from other guys in the top 10. That's why you're seeing guys like Rory McDonald, Benson Henderson, who I love as a person and as a fighter, going to Bellator, which is comfortably in that second tier of MMA. So I think this is more of a statement of WME saying, okay, how can we get the best bang for the buck? We're going to invest in the people worth investing, and then the rest of it's going to be guys filling out cards, who moves the needle, who has an exciting fight, and then we can get a little bit out of and just go from there. So I think it's a bigger statement seeing top 10 guys who would be 1 or 2 wins away from a justifiable title shot, walking away to another promotion where they could be a champion within 1 or 2 fights and say, okay, this is a bigger picture thing from WME, and this is something that I don't think we're close to seeing the end of.
The way I look at these, and you look at the Ryan Bader situation, what does Bellator truly get out of this? They get a really good fighter, and I think for them, that's probably enough when it comes to Ryan Bader. You know, he's a guy who has headlined UFC cards in the past. He's fought some of the biggest names. He's fought John Jones. He's fought Tito Ortiz. He's fought Rampage Jackson. So he is a very recognizable name. He's not a superstar, but he's a recognizable name, and he's a good fighter, and that is something Bellator is interested in.